Well, hello, everybody. It is Friday again, and I'm here to share with all of you what is new, what is going on in the saddle fitting world. And we have always so many great questions, and we have also each week more and more viewers. So thank you, everybody, for sharing and telling your friends. So I'm very excited about that. So I promised Sonia to have a very short introduction today. I just need to check in with her if she's still there because I have lost her. I didn't hear her earlier. Sonia, are you?
Yes, had a minor connection issue, but I am back.
Okay, so are we ready to go?
Yes, we are ready to go.
Okay, so time me. You're going to see how fast my intro is going to be.
All right, you got 5 minutes and the clock starts now.
Okay. I am Jochen Schleser. I'm here for you today, and I love horses, and I grew up on horses. And my most successful horse his name was Pirate, and I rode with him on the German team. Unfortunately, I had to retire him because he had a lameness. Nobody could figure it out. We had not a fall. We didn't run against a tree. And it turned out only years later, until the veterinarians had lots of experience, that it is actually came from a saddle. Now, needless to say, as a trainer, judge, rider myself, how can it be a saddler? Because after all, I'm a master saddle maker. It's very simple because in the industry, saddle makers do not get taught biomechanics of the horse or the rider, physiology, anatomy of the rider or the horse. So Saddlefit for Life made it a mission to go together with lots of experts from all over the world. These people, only what they do is study the horse and their connection with the saddle. So these three gentlemen are a fabulous asset to Saddlefit for Life. And of course, my question always was, what should fit first, the saddle or the rider, the saddle to the rider or the saddle to the horse? So if we go to our masters, they always said it has to fit the rider first, because if the rider doesn't have an independent seat, so let's see what that it says. So in this whole writing up on this little write-up, it says, it's the utmost importance not to cause the pupil any discomfort. So if the rider is not comfortable or properly fitted in the saddle, they don't have a pliable seat, and they will hurt the horse. Look at the last line. The horse will suffer pain. So no matter how good the saddle fits, if it doesn't fit the rider, the horse will suffer pain. So, and that's where this gentleman, who's a medical doctor, came up with, well, the rider will have long-term damage if you don't fit the rider. So needless to say, Saddlefit for Life makes it their mission to surround themselves with experts from all over the world so that the rider don't have these deformities. It doesn't matter if the veterinarians are from Brazil and teach at the Brazilian universities and in Sao Paulo and work with cool technology. Doesn't matter if veterinarian from down under travel the world and teaches other veterinarians. They are now taking the trees and can actually show you, look at that, how the cartilage and the bone will deform and grow bone to defend themselves. Another huge asset to Saddlefit for Life is Dr. Katarina Thiersen. She is an incredible amount of wealth, and I'm looking forward to do more webinars with her as well. And of course, Dr. Gerd Heuschmann, as the veterinarian, says, well, look at on top. Look at on top of the saddle. Look at the riders. Look at how they ride. Why are so many riders kick and crank and spank? So the rider forms a horse. Old masters wrote a book about it. So when we have veterinarians who blame the rider, so where's all the problems? Clinicians say they hang in the horse's mouth. The horses get deformity because the horses are written upside down, hollow back, crank and pull. But then we also have veterinarians who wrote journals on the facial expression. So for us, Saddlefit for Life, we look at the science, we look at the law of nature, and we look at everything, what is in connection to get the well-being for horse and rider. Very happy to say this is a very famous book. It's mine, but I got to brag a little bit about it, and that's why it's in several universities as a teaching book. And Saddlefit for Life, here for you today, to help you to understand. In the last time, there's lots of changes happened, and last week we had a fabulous webinar with people who understand, horses evolved through breeding, through training, through sport. And how fun was that webinar last week, Sonia, with this wonderful lady, huh? host explained us with all the difference in the changes, how they change over the time. But yeah, go ahead.
That was an incredible webinar, and I'm happy to say that she will be joining us for more. So if you missed it, definitely tune in when we have her on again.
Yes, so here again, a wonderful webinar. So what was the time? Did I make it? Did I make it?
You made it. You have done it in 4 minutes.
So for all you newcomers, normally my introduction is much longer. And for most people we see, they're very, very loyal viewers. So you probably, I'm sure you enjoyed it, that we get much faster through the questions today. So Sonia, the floor is yours. How can we start?
All right, so I have a whole bunch of questions, and some of these are actually going to be quite long, but the first one talks about some of the consequences that we see saddles that are not fitted correctly. And it is, what can cause hard lumps underneath the saddle?
Okay, so I like to back up a little bit, and I want you to think about this first, because we have people watching us from Arizona, where there's a lot of spiders. I have seen horses with bumps, and they have bought saddle after saddle, fitted, and to find out that they actually had insect bites, and which can be sometimes very violent. So we need to get to the cause. Is it caused by a saddle, by a saddle pad? Are you ready for this? By a girth? Saddle bumps or bumps on the horse's back underneath the saddle could actually be caused by really shitty girth. So there's a lot of different bumps. Some bumps could be, they appear when you finish riding, and they're a little bit water bubble, and they disappear after 20 minutes. You push on it, you poke on it, the horse doesn't react in it, but you start thinking, why is always this swelling after riding? Some of a bump is a combination of color disformation or just the swelling. So this one here, let me get a saddle tree so you get a better understanding. This bump is directly, Sonia, can you see me? My tree?
Yep, I can see the tree.
Okay, good. Because I don't see the picture on my screen, that's why I thought to make sure. So you see how this stirrup bar here is attached to the gullet plate? You can see these two rivets belong to this bar. So this stirrup bar, okay, sometimes this end digs inside. So when I hold this tree this way, and you're looking from that area, like my hand, this way, you can see that stirrup bar is nicely away from the horse. Some of the stirrup bars are set on the inside, and they literally dig into it. So that's where the stirrup bar sits. But looking at the swelling from that most likely can be what we call an insect bite. So that is something we definitely need to investigate more. And sometimes it's a very easy trick. Let me find if I have a pen lying around. So you can see this pen here, very, very flexible. Right? So I'm going to grab the saddle. You can see on that area, if I lift up the skirt, right there is the bar. So pretend this is now sitting on the horse. You take the pen, okay, stick the pen point inside. Otherwise, this edge here, the square edge of the pen scratches the leather and hurts the horse. The pen point never colors the leather unless you go this way, where who pokes the saddle or the horse, right? So you go this way from the top, here's the withers, and you stroke it down. Most of the time, where you can't get your pen through it, it's where that stirrup bar is, okay? And that's exactly in this picture where you see this big bump. If you get your pen easy through it, and that bump is just a little soft tissue, then most likely it's a spider bite. This here, we can see a different kind of a bumps. Here we see white hair, and we see several bumps. Now let's talk about white hairs quick. We know from universities from Scotland, 2014, they've written an article that at 4.566 kPa, kilopascal, the little, let me just stand up to show you what I'm trying to demonstrate. If I push with my thumb into my lower arm, if I press hard enough, okay, I can feel now in my fingers lack of blood flow because I'm interrupting the blood flow. So at what amount of pressure will the muscle have lack of blood flow, nutrition? It is not a very high pressure. So if your saddle exceeds that pressure, first it shows up in small dry spots. And then when the coat changes and the new hair comes in, first what will happen before you see atrophy, okay, if the pressure is on the small surface area, you will actually stop the nutrition to the hair follicle, to the new hair, and the new hair comes in white, right? So it doesn't get the nutrition, so it turns in white. So white hair doesn't come overnight. It's not like a saddle presses the color out of the hair. Okay, so white hair mostly comes in at the next coat change. I've seen that so many times. People call me from all over the world and they say, I finally got my dream saddle. My horse goes beautiful. I ride beautiful. And guess what? I have white hairs now with my new saddle. What happened is that person ridden in the summer with a saddle she had, and the horse was going really bad, stumbling, throwing the head off. The horse won't go forward. So that was a previous saddle was so tight in the shoulder so that the new coat came in the fall when she got a new saddle with the pressure marks from the previous coat. So white hair, always remember, is super high pressure, comes and shows up with the new coat. Now you have horses like the roans or chestnuts, and sometimes they grow white hair all of a sudden. And you've seen those horses before, there are spots everywhere. So when you all of a sudden see a quarter-sized white hair growing on the horse's neck, it's not because the rein leaned too hard against the side of the neck of the horse. It's just because they grow a patch of white hairs. So certain breeds and certain color hairs have that. Look at the picture again and you see a different bumps. Now those bumps, those bumps, let's say they're hard. Hard, they feel like, how can I explain the texture? Like when you have a cut in your arm and it heals, and then that dried blood and the dry skin protects that hard feel. So that crust you feel on your cut, that's how that texture feels under the hair. So now you go and says, uh-oh, what's that? And the horse definitely reacts to it if you push on it with your finger. When the veterinarian looks at this, you ask 3 different veterinarians, you get 3 different answers. One vet says calcium deposit. The second vet says parasites, because parasites like to live there, put their eggs where a lot of heat is. And underneath the saddle where friction and weight and rubbing is, more friction, that's where a lot of heat is. So parasite like to lay the egg in there. The other reason why the third vet would say, oh, ingrown hair. Okay, so how do I fix it? Most veterinarians say, cut it out. And then I can tell you exactly. But what does that mean for you who has so little time to ride, several months without riding? As a competitor, you can't afford it. So what can I do? And here's something what is really cool. Some veterinarian says you buy this expensive zinc oxide cream. It's very sticky and gross, but you don't need to cut it. It goes away with it. And the other vet told me, I can't remember on what continent that was, he says, buy a bottle of Head and Shoulders. Wash that area really, really well for 2 or 3 minutes, make it very foamy and leave that foam on that horse's back for 5 minutes and then wash it off. Do that every day for 2 weeks and you will see the bumps disappear. The calcium deposit, the parasites, or the ingrown hair will disappear 95%. If it doesn't work, you wasted a bottle of Head and Shoulder and you cleaned your horse too much. So that for those hard bumps, it's very good to get rid of it. Now, how do they come? Well, most saddles are too narrow in the tree width. Let me show you a tree. That means the distance from my 2 fingers. Okay, so if I push this together, like that. See, these corners come together. Okay, and now I let it go, it comes out. So the distance from these two fingers is the tree width. And then when these are too narrow and the bottom flares out, that's the angle. So if I extend this to this, they will meet these two lines, and that gives me an angle. This is a steep angle, this is a flat angle. So most saddles are too narrow on top in the tree width and too flat in the angle. So what do the saddles do? They pinch where my thumb is and they roll and create friction. Kind of like I'm taking my hand on my hair here, move around, roll and roll, and you see all my little hairs are turning into little knots. Okay, and it creates friction, means heat, driving the hair back into the skin. And of course, the worst of all the causes is detergent on saddle pads. Who would have thought that most detergents, what really keeps the pad up so nice, causes these bumps? It's actually to 80% detergent what causes this bump. So people freak out and say, oh my God, what kind of detergent should I buy? Detergents, what is double rinsed and for babies? Because with the sweat and the friction and the heat, the chemicals, what you see, will create, with the sweat of the horse, this reaction, what creates these calcium deposits, especially on chestnuts, and big problems with grays. So what else we have on bumps? You know, these are more white hairs, and typical, the myth of saddle fitting, you know, many people have been let down the wrong way in terms of how a saddle should fit. And it's sad, it's really sad that people say a saddle should sit on the front and the back like a 4-post chair in the sand. If the chair doesn't move, if the 4 posts of the chair digs into the sand, so it stays solid. That creates 90% of all saddles, which I see, which are wrongly fit, are too tight in the front and too tight in the loin. There where you sit, barely sit, contact the horse, and the rider is above the horse. He thinks he's close to the horse. The only thing is a massive problem. So here's a classical case of overheating the area, of bridge fitting, or the materials you have in your saddle pads. Many saddle pads have materials what creates such a heat, you literally burn the horse's back. So you see this a lot. Now, many manufacturers and many riders, they go, la, 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 I don't hear anything, I'm not listening. So here we go, you know. You ask yourself, why don't you listen to your horse? Why are you all like this? Because if you have problems, I sell you another saddle, I sell you another saddle pad, I sell you another, I sell. But if you love your horses and you want to avoid these horrible swellings, this is probably one of the worst, you know, we trying to, at Saddlefit for Life, we trying to really answer this more from a scientific way. If it's for the gender appropriate saddle, or if it's from veterinarians who live all their life on studying the facial expression, that doesn't hurt. Hitting the horses and beating in a submission, cutting out bumps is not the solution, okay? Because look at the eyes, the ears of the horse, they don't lie. Right? Horses suffer not only physical, but also psychological. So at Saddlefit for Life, we base this information we share with you from all the years we collected in collaboration of all the other experts who are like 20,000 times smarter than me. I just like to help you and your horse. And the saddle bumps is a massive issue.
Okay, thank you for that. And I actually have a few additional questions just that popped up. So the stirrup leather, when you're adjusting it, when it's too tight to pull, what causes that? Because it's typically from the panel, is it not?
There's 4 major reasons. Let me get a tree again. Yeah, here we go. So the one I already mentioned, that the bar is pushed too much in. Number two, you just mentioned, Sonia, I'm going to stand up. Number two is if the panel, is my hand, is overstuffed. I see that so many times. So many saddles are stuffed as if you overpump your car tire. Imagine how shitty the drive is on your car if you overpump your car tire. You have very little surface on the road and you slither all over the place. Many saddle fitters, I can call them, think so more you stuff in, the better it is. You know, so what happens then? The panel, the surrounding, let me just get a saddle. Okay, so this soft leather here, okay, it acts like, well, like a, how do I explain that? Maybe the tire again, okay? This softness is also on top. So harder you make it, and so unskilled you are, you're stuffing a tube rather than a flat, firm surface. Why do I want to stuff a panel what is flat and firm? Because that eliminates the pressure towards the horse. So if a good saddler or a good company who makes saddles fits a flat surface, you have tons of room. You can see here where my finger is, where this duro bar runs through. So number one, the bar is too much in. Number two, like Sonia said, the panels is overstuffed like a sausage. Number three, look at the alignment from here to there. Sometimes the alignment in the bar itself is off, okay? It's not overstuffed, it's not bent in, but the duro bar itself has a flaw, okay? And last but not least, number four, the stirrup leather is very thick. There's many stirrup leathers who are very, very thick because they're double now. They have nylon in it or leather. So the strap itself, it's much too thick for the opening of that little strap. Okay, so good question, Sonia.
Perfect, thank you. And let's see, I have another question. So for buying a saddle, what advice do you have, especially for people who might not have a Saddlefit for Life certified fitter in their area? And especially for people who, when they call out a fitter, what they're really calling out is a representative of that saddle manufacturer. How do they know that what they're buying is for them and for the horse, as opposed to the person just trying to make a sale?
Okay, so I like to compare it with a person who has a very irritating cough. And now that we have in COVID, we know, oh my God, do I have COVID-19 because I have this scratchy cough? So let's pretend it is before COVID time, okay? I mean, not just instantly think everything is COVID. So let's pretend it's 2019 and I have a scratch in my throat and I constantly cough. If I go to a doctor and says, do I have lung cancer or throat cancer? What would the doctor say? He would give me a lot of tests, or he sells me an expensive prescription. Most people, when they are really, really concerned, get one or two tests. Where am I going with this? I'm going with that is when it's your health and when you're really, really concerned, you're going to go 2 or 3 opinions and then you go with one, what convinced you the most, and what is that? Most likely the person who did the best analysis, okay? So now back to the saddle. It's about your horse health this time, okay? A, look on video, look online. How do these people, whoever you choose, are there before and after the sale? Do they just sell your saddle or do also service the saddle they sell you? Number 2, how do they collect the information? Now, Sonia will send you in this comment box a link of where you can see how a saddler should work, or a saddle fitter, or equine ergonomist or saddle ergonomist, they measure and they look at the existing saddle, they measure the rider, and they measure the horse. So with these measurements, static as well as dynamic, which means they'll see how the saddle sits in the cross tie, like standing, without and with saddle pad, and then they'll watch you ride. So now after that analysis or evaluation, they give you a written report. I always would recommend get a written report. Make sure everything is filled out completely. Just like you, for your health, want a thorough investigation, a thorough analysis. Demand it from whoever you work that they do a thorough investigation. So now you can see before you call them online, before you call them out on their website. Call them up. How do you work? So if you want to see it a little bit per video, as I said, Sonia will put that on the comment list. And then when you say, what should I watch on the saddle? Now that I have the measurements from my horse, I have the measurement of me, they understand my horse is like a cannonball. She's like, takes off and has a movement, it's hard to sit, you know. What do I need to look in the saddle? The number one, what I need to explain to people, be very aware about this, is that many salespeople or companies sell you a story. They sell you something what is so ridiculous as they tell you with their full honesty, the earth is flat. In other words, they try to convince you something so unlogical. Even you feel it in your gut, that's BS. That doesn't make no sense. Okay, but they are so convincing. They have the success. They're paying people who ride in expensive sport. They're riding in their saddle. But your gut somehow feel that makes no sense. It's not logical. Doesn't follow the law of nature. And I have never heard a veterinarian agree to what this person says. So first advice, follow your instinct. Number two, horses do change. They are living beings. Okay. In nature, they walk 20 miles for 17 hours with their head down and look for food. In captivity, they don't walk 20 miles. And in nature, they don't carry other beings. Okay? The only time when another being is on that animal is when the lion is on their back or the stallion breathes or they fight. But if you have a riding horse and the horse carries you as an Olympian, Western English racing or amateur, you will create, hopefully, you will create a nice harmony between you and the horse without damaging the ligaments, joints, and nervous and vascular system. So how did you do it? How humans did it for 4,500 years. By putting the saddle on an area what doesn't damage, such as cartilage, bones, and ligaments, and nerves, so and muscles. And here comes the kicker. Every horse will change. Age, nutrition, conditioning, riding, because you carry weight. You carry weight. You start carrying weight every day, 20% of your body weight. Your body will change. I guarantee you, half an hour, and no matter how much you ride, run around with extra weight, 20% of your weight, your body will change. So that changes requires that the saddle needs to be refitted. So
But Jochen,
yeah.
What about the fitters who say that their saddle fits every horse and never needs to be adjusted?
That's excellent, Sonia.
Quite common.
Yeah, so those, when you hear that, they most likely have the saddle designed so it sits on their spine. It hangs literally on the ligaments and on the spine. It sits on the lumbar and on the shoulder where the horse barely can move. Okay, so these people, I'll give you an example. Because we sell and we are also sell education, we are often in South Africa. So it doesn't matter if I'm in Cape Town, Johannesburg, or Durban. When you drive around the village, you see people, ladies, with a lot of weight on top of the head. So on top of the head, they carry this big basket. Okay, so they carry with their bone. So if the person would carry it with muscles, right, not with the skeleton, then the horse will change. So back to your question, Sonia. The saddles, what will fit every horse or doesn't need to be refitted, most likely sits on the skeleton, on the shoulder blade. Now it's okay. Maybe it works in South Africa for the ladies who carry heavy water and wood and whatever around. But if you want to have the horse what is moving and have freedom in the shoulder and does not get scapular damage, in other words, on the shoulder, then I highly recommend, what do you want? Do you want to become a person? Let me see if I find that slide again. You want to become a person who where we have it. You know which slide are you looking for? This one. Okay. These bones don't lie, right? So what Sonia just mentioned, what about a saddle what fits every horse? They sit on the scapular. And the deformity and on those scapulars are huge, scary. And that's how I lost my best friend, because I fell for it myself as a saddler. Myself fell for idiocy and says, yeah, fits every horse. No, it's impossible. Like, not every shoe fits every human. And if the horse should move, it needs to be on muscles and not on ligaments or bones, spines, or cartilage.
That actually brings up another good point. Is we see a lot of fitters who, especially during the static analysis, the saddle bridges, and their reasoning is it allows the horse to lift its back. That's like saying when someone stands on your back in high heels, you're going to be willing to come up into that pressure as opposed to run away from it.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that question in a minute. It's a very easy exercise everybody can do. Okay, so first of all, here's the damage you can see in the cartilage. This is a normal shoulder blade. You can see no extra bone growth and no extra deformity here. Okay, very, very clear. The humerus goes right through here, and that would be the corner what goes towards the saddle tree. So if you look at the next picture, look at the bone deformity here and look at the extra bone growth. Okay, so these razor sharp little bone spurs, can you imagine you have that on your shoulders every time you type on the computer, every time you're trying to lift something? The pain these horses go through is insane. It's insane. Okay, so the body then starts to protect themselves. This picture here is typical for the argument Sonia just said. What about the theory of fitting hollow? 99% of all horses with white hairs are on the front and in the back. Only bareback riders and treeless saddles have white hair in the middle. Do the math. Why do we have so much white hair in the front and in the back and barely ever in the middle? Because the longest muscle where the saddle sits, hopefully stays nice and supple and soft. The back muscle, the locomotive muscle, if that back muscle, the longissimus dorsi, is soft, the horse can bring his back up, haunches underneath, and the power goes forward. In the racehorse, dressage, jumping, endurance, pleasure, western, doesn't matter, okay? When your back is rigid and stiff, you're making very short steps and you're having massive pain in your back. If your back is nice and loose, you can pivot your pelvis, you can make big strides, and guess what? You can even jump over a ditch. Now back to Sonia's analogy with the high heels. But what about this? Everything what goes up goes down. When we do computerized saddle pressure with whatever saddle, whatever horse, okay, we need to think about maybe Isaac Newton had an idea. Maybe Isaac Newton wasn't as stupid as some people say. Maybe that guy was smart and knew a little bit about physics. And when we think about gravity, okay, so everything goes up, goes down. The moment the horse's back goes up, the rider swings with it, and the back goes down, the rider will follow. The most impact is while the rider still follows, and the back wants to come up again. That's when you get the highest impact. Let me give you an idea. If I stand up Sonia, can you see this button on my shirt here?
Nope, that's a bit too low.
Okay, so I want to make sure that everybody sees this. Can you see this button?
Yep.
Okay, so this is my guts, okay, my stomach. Watch this. No matter how hard I hit it, it doesn't hurt because I knew the fist comes and I contract it. Now, if I make this nice and loose and supple and I would hit it and my fist digs in here, I hurt my organs. Now can you see me now, Sonia? I don't know the level.
You're good.
Okay, so my analogy is if you want a soft back muscle and every time the back goes down, keep in mind the saddle is hollow in the middle. The highest impact is where this horse has the white hair. What do you think this back muscle will do? It will get super rich and tight. And even if you do a tummy lift, including rounding the haunches, the back will never lift as high to fill the hollow area of the saddle. Probably the most or craziest type of saddle fitting is the bridge fit. I don't know if I find it that fast. No. Go ahead and ask me the next questions. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question that I have is, when should you get your saddle fit? We get a lot of questions for people who are having their horses backed and want to know when is the ideal time for their horses to get fit and how often it needs to be fit for a horse in regular work who is just starting ridden work.
Okay, the reason why I'm using this picture here, I think the most sophisticated and detailed work I find from Christian Peham. Okay, this gentleman is the professor at the University of Vienna in Austria. And then the gentleman here, Michael Weishaupt, I met him in California and he invited me to his university in Zurich. So Christian Peham has probably the most detailed research ever done. And when you do a research, you have to have a research protocol. How do you do the study and how do you evaluate the results? So that is huge for everybody who does research, you know what I mean. Now, what I heard and what I can only second over my last 43 years and measured over 150,000 horses, we had customers who we see regular 3 to 4 times sometimes in a year. A horse by nature has a complete different body fat because what do? They survive the winter. So when they eat in the fall, and I have one of our saddle agronomists, Heather, she's from way up north in Alberta, and she has all kinds of horses, any kind of breed, and she can see the horse also eats different roughage in the fall versus in the spring. So the horse prepares itself for a season that's in their DNA, okay? No matter how fancy we misbreed these horses, it's in their DNA. So they have different shapes. Now comes on top, let's say you don't ride regular, you only ride in the summer. So with the way they digest the food, with the way they're building body fat and store food for the winter, and with you not riding, you have 2 horses. You have a summer horse and you have a winter horse. Or let's put it this way, the horse in the spring when you start riding looks completely different than the horse in the fall when you finished riding. Completely different. So that's why I recommend when you buy a new saddle, make sure you can adjust the saddle in the billets positioning, in the panel length, in the panel thickness and shape, saddle balance front to back, left to right, in the tree width, tree angle, and can the saddle be orthopedic adjusted, more on one side versus the other? Because all you know, we as humans don't have our organs in the center and absolutely symmetrical. and we are either left or right brain, left-handed or right-handed. Same with the animals. Okay, and sometimes it's a skeletal difference that the skeleton from the tree needs to match the skeleton from the horse. You cannot launch the horse straight, and you cannot train the horse straight, and you cannot long rein the horse straight if it's a skeleton difference. I give you an analogy with a bunion. If you are a super soccer player or football player or basketball player or volleyball player, okay, no matter how hard you do training, your bunion stays unless you surgical remove it. Okay, so orthopedic adjustment is super important, just as the independence in the adjustment in the tree width versus tree angle. So those four is the number one. Number two is how much spacing is over the horse's spine. So if I grab a saddle again, okay, your saddle, whatever saddle you buy, should be able to be adjusted in the width through here. Okay, very important. So while many people lift the flap and they take a stuffer and stuff from the side, they make a sausage out here or put more wool in it, the shape is on number 5 in terms of importance. If you have a saddle that has a reinforced metal plate, okay, the horse has metal on the feet, metal in the mouth, and another gullet plate on top of the neck. If this plate doesn't fit in the angle, okay, you can see the angle, and here from this corner to corner, you would measure the width of that metal plate. If that plate doesn't fit, it's exactly the same if you have a horse with little tricky hoofs and the farrier need to do orthopedic adjustments there. Okay, if he doesn't put the right shoe on, the horse is lame. You think you can train against this? No. So training a skeleton, you can change. Muscular, you can change if you know what to do.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And I have a question from one of our viewers, which I think would help pretty much everyone who's watching this, is what are some key questions they can ask a saddle fitter to make sure that they're choosing someone who has the correct knowledge?
Can you repeat that question, please?
So are there any questions that a client can ask the saddle fitter to make sure that the saddle fitter knows what they're talking about and has the correct knowledge to fit and not cause damage?
I understood you the first time. Why do I ask you to repeat it? Because this is the most important question. This is such a good question. Okay, so my number one is, I don't know how you feel about it, whoever listens to me, when you do something, I'll give you an example. You go to the mechanic and the mechanic, what's wrong? You go, the car goes clack, 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 clack over here. And the mechanic got to figure out what clack, clack, clack means. Was it click, click, click or clack, clack, clack? So with riding, if I ride and I can feel it is the saddle, because if I ride my friend's saddle, I don't have that feel. The horse falls off over the right shoulder. It's a little clammy. It rolls underneath. It's heavy in my hands. It doesn't really reach up, and I have a hard time in the envers travers. If your fitter is not a rider or does not know a word you just said, walk away. Walk away. Because just as the mechanic who has no idea where to look at clack, 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 or click, 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 if your fitter cannot sit on your horse or at least understand what you're saying, how can he help you to get that feel? But you know in your heart, there's something blocking. Okay, so number one, ask the fitter, are you a rider? Have you ridden? Do you speak my language? Number two, how do you adjust my saddle? How would you work on that? Okay, where do you get your profession? I did it on a weekend course, product training from this company to sell these saddles. Okay, what do you know about human anatomy? Human anatomy? I just know this saddle is good because the world champion rides in it. So nothing? Okay. Then for me, it's important that a good fitter knows horse and human biomechanics, basic anatomy when it comes to their body. The differences, the 9 differences between a male and female, that's anatomy, not opinion, okay? It's nature. And of course, the most important part is Why? Why? Ask the customer, ask the fitter, why do you do what you do? Oh, I want to make as much money as I can. I want to sell you as many saddles as I can. I can rip you off. I can want to hurt your horse. Why do you are a fitter? Ask the fitter, why do you do what you do? So if the person doesn't know the why, he will not know the how, right? So if you say a fitter says, oh, I really want to make a difference for you and the horse, the fitter may say to you, you know, your saddle fits really good, but it's the blanket what overheats the horse's back, because a good fitter knows all about the different materials on the saddle pads, and he knows all about the too short or too long elastic and fancy marketing schemes on girth, what only hurts your wallet, but increasingly hurts your horse. So a good fitter can understand the dynamic and static fit. So ask the person, can you watch me before you adjust my saddle, what my problem is? So if the person has no idea what to look when somebody rides in front of you, that's maybe a red flag. And then after he adjusted, okay, make sure he or she watches how the horse goes now. Is the horse not breaking off to the right side? Is the horse getting lighter? If the horse chewing, if he comes soft through the pole, do you get that nice round back? Okay. If the fitter doesn't see it and doesn't collaborate right there and then with you, how would that ever work? What you're looking for, what is only done by art and feel. Okay, so these are the most important questions I would always ask a fitter. Are you a rider? Do you fit static and dynamic? Do you watch me riding before and after? Do you understand physiology, biomechanics of human and horse? And most important, do you do it right there and then?
And one thing I want to add is if your fitter dismisses anything in regards to the behavior of the horse, run away. If they look at a horse who misbehaves and say that, you know, the horse is just that way, or they don't identify it as a possible symptom of pain, that means that they're really not looking at the horse to tell them if there is a problem, which means they're really not fitting it. They're putting on a saddle and trying to make the horse fit the saddle as opposed to the saddle fit the horse.
Sonia, why do our equine ergonomists and for sure our saddle ergonomists need to do the recertification?
They need to do the recertification because we are constantly updating our courses. We work with industry professionals from all walks, so body workers, veterinarians, farriers, the works. And what we do is we constantly add to our course. We are looking at new methods of research, new methods of fitting, new data that's being put out, and we constantly update everything that we teach. So in order for our fitters to have the best information and provide the best service and protect the horse as best they can, they need to constantly recertify. And we make sure that they do. We have very strict standards for everyone. And if they don't adhere to our principles, our values, and our philosophy, then they actually lose their certification for life.
So how can a customer know that person is still certified, or how can Saddlefit for Life ensure they have just been recertified, but they don't fill out the form correctly, or they didn't read the latest article from Dr. Sue Dyson? What's the facial expression? They're going to say, oh yeah, he's just a stupid gelding, just kick him in the stomach. You know, so how can a customer protect themselves from that?
So if a customer has any issue with the Saddlefit for Life certified fitter, either a saddle ergonomist or an equine ergonomist, they can actually contact us directly, and usually through Facebook Messenger or email is the best method to do this. But they can open an inquiry, and what we will do is we will contact the fitter, start an investigation, and make sure that there is no misconduct taking place, that none of the code of ethics are being broken. And if they are, then there is remedial action. But as I said before, we are extremely strict. So if we do find out that something like that happened, they are stripped of their certification.
Do you want to share this very quick? I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but I find that so good. What last week, the webinar, how she talks about how these horses are now hypermobile and super flexible. And for saddle fitting is, of course, a massive problem because all of a sudden the length of the back where the saddle sits is so much shorter. You want to just maybe in the same contents we just talk about how important it is for the saddle fitters to know that. If you don't educate, you don't know this. And how could that result into a problem?
So this was from our last webinar where we talked about the modern breeding standards. And it's important for all of our fitters to understand this because not only does this present a completely different animal in regards to how it is just physically built, but in the movement as well, in how we have to fit the rider, in issues that we see in the horse and in the rider. And it presents a slew of issues that if our fitters are not educated on and taught about, they will never be able to fit these horses properly because when you look at the gaits of these horses, the movement patterns, they vary greatly from their ancestors from even 40, 50 years ago.
What do you think when people say saddle fit for life philosophy or saddle fit for life doesn't work? What do you mean with that? What could that mean?
If they say saddle fit for life doesn't work, I think it's just a lack of understanding of the importance of correct saddle fit. A lot of people, when they're growing up, when they are in riding schools, saddle fit was never part of it. It was never even taught or mentioned. Saddles were passed around from pony to pony, horse to horse. You know, people never talked about saddle fit to the horse, let alone even, thinking about saddle fit to the rider. Yet, when we mention it, it seems like this alien sort of thing that we do. But when you look at other sports, you have socks that are for men and women. You have all this different gear for the different genders. You have to have all your equipment fitted properly because you can't function. Yet,
the comment, a little bit too long is not bad.
Yeah, a little bit too long. I mean, if you are a downhill skier, if your boots are a little bit too tight, you're going to lose blood flow in your feet and you're going to have some serious problems. If you are a figure skater and your skates are too loose, you're going to break your ankle. If you are a race car driver and one of your tires is not inflated properly, you're going to crash and burn. Or better yet, if you're a pilot and one of your engines is not functioning properly, you're probably not going to stay in the sky for too long.
So what I'm hearing is it's only the pilot or the person on top of it who suffers. But in saddle fitting, it is the animal who suffers silent. And you want to talk about this picture quick, how the saddle is a little bit too long?
So for this one, what we're looking at is the saddle goes beyond the last vertebrae. And I'm going to repeat that, the last vertebrae, not the last rib. And this is where a lot of people get confused. They measure the edge of the last rib and they go upward. However, what that does is it puts the back of the saddle already on the lumbar. So you're probably going to be sitting at L3 or L4. And that's going to cause the horse to not be able to move through the back. It's going to cause the horse to hollow, tilt the pelvis, be heavy on the forehand, not be able to carry itself properly, not be able to carry the rider properly, and push away from the pain that is in the back.
Yeah. So I think what makes me mad is that's why I kind of loved that one picture you sent me today. How many people go, la, 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 I'm not listening. That's kind of jokingly, but also sad because these tools here, they just record what it is. When it's a little bit too long or you got the shitty girth on or the bad saddle pad, the horse reacts in their vital signs, and we know when their heart rate is elevated, human or horses, the stress level is there. And how many of you girls and boys and riders, how many of you guys have said, oh, I don't know, my horse has ulcer again, and there's a reason why my master told me when you ride in the first 10 circles, your horse better has saliva in the mouth. And I'm not talking about you feeding him non-stop sugar or give him a fancy alloy or metal in the mouth what creates that. You as a rider have to create and animate the horse to lick and chew. That saliva breaks down that acid in nature. Remember I said 17 hours they chew and force. That acid breaks down the ulcer and the colic. right? So when we have tools like this here, and we can see horse's mouth is dry or open, no chewing, no licking, and the heart rate is elevated, how can you argue or go la 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 la, I don't listen to the vital signs of your horse unless you don't care? So I know all of you who have shared, and I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for sharing these weekly seminars, because what we're really trying to do is make a difference for these animals, what get sometimes for financial gain abused. And yeah, depends on the restrictions. In a month or so, I'm looking forward to one of my last courses I give in Germany in German, and then one more in English. These are my live demonstration. Most of it goes online, and I have fabulous trainers who will do the in-house training, inbound training all over the world. So I can't wait for that. Sonia and I will focus on working with experts from all over the world in any kind of a field. Is it shoeing? Because let's think about it. No hoof, no horse. And how the veterinarian often sees, wow, listen, look at that. The left heel is lower, the right heel is higher. Left toe is longer. Very common, very common. Okay. And how many horses may go to the right versus to the left? So shoeing, breeding, like we said earlier, is all important. So Sonia and I are going to bring your riders up to speed, bring the information via this wonderful webinar and the Academy. And that's what we're going to focus on, because I already noticed it literally, would you say so, Sonia, how it exploded since we started this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, we have so many questions coming in. And just to let people know, if you go on to our Saddlefit for Life Academy website, we do have something called a Fit Challenge. It doesn't cost you anything, but what it does is it gives you a short video to tell you how to very quickly map out the horse, what to look for, and then you're presented with a checklist to see where some areas are that are of concern. And the difference between us and other saddle fitters is, for Saddlefit for Life, we ourselves, we don't actually sell saddles. The sister company, which is Schlesa, they do. But for us, if a saddle is sold, we don't get a kickback. We just want to protect the horse. We want to protect the rider. And our goal is to educate the public so that they can protect themselves against people who just want to make a quick buck.
Yeah. And for all the naysayer and for all those, yeah, what a nice marketing scheme, they probably have not done their market research. Because if I just think one continent, North America, there are 9.6 million horses. We have a 0.09% market share, and we barely can keep up with the service. So we are continuously, of course, grow. But if everybody would buy our saddles, or we fit everybody's saddles, it's impossible. It's literally impossible. No single company in the world, there's companies who make 6,000 saddles a day. It's unbelievable. Even that company cannot help the riders and the horses worldwide. So the only way Sonia and I dedicated and committed our life to this is by sharing our education, because I learned a long time ago, what you give free away, you get 10 times back, 10 times. And already I see the fabulous recommendation and people like you sharing our information. And we want to help the horse, like Sonia said. So my next webinar is in the queue, so I'm looking forward to that. And Sonia, any goodbye words you might want to say before we go?
No, I just want to thank everyone for joining us on a weekly basis. And like Jochen said, we do this for you and we do it for your horses. So, don't miss out. And if you ever have any questions, don't be shy, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help.
Thanks very much. And I hope you tell all your friends, and see you next Friday.